Cool, everything seems to be working. This is a dry run of what a live stream would look like here in my little makeshift studio. It's also my basement. So what I want to set up is I want to set up a stream where I can share my photo and video process, kind of different things I do, a lot of random projects and things of that nature. But today, it's just a test. So we're going to keep things pretty simple. I want to take a photograph of this camera. This is a camp snap that I bought a while back as kind of a toy to play with. And I want to take a picture of this floating on the desk with a gradient, kind of a color gradient backdrop with this black backdrop and some color kind of splashing there. So I went ahead and I set up the cameras a little bit just to get things sort of prepped and make this streamlined. But I'm just testing things out with OBS. So what I did is I'm using I'm using Steam, not Stream, I'm using Steam so I can make my Xbox controller into a switcher. And then I'm using an Osmo Pocket 3 so it can kind of track me around the room. Yeah, this is looking pretty good. And then I'm just gonna finagle the angle a little bit. So if it loses me, at least I have the Xbox controller and I can just kind of change the angle. But the idea is I have my camera set up over here. This is kind of my subject, and yeah, I just want to take some photos of it. I'm using a 300 watt light as kind of my key light, and I'm going to use continuous lights just to kind of keep things easy and streamlined. I do have strobes, but I like working with continuous light sometimes. I just find it easier to work with. So I can share what things are going to look like, and that's the feed coming from my A7R4, and I have a 90mm macro on here that I'm going to use. So this is sort of my subject, just a neat little camera. And what I have over here is, this is a 60 watt light with a Fresnel lens that I'm using as a backlight because I just like having, I really like having a nice orange backlight with sort of a neutral daylight kind of key light, and using that mix and match of like color temperatures. I feel like it makes the backlight pop a little bit more. I really like that kind of look. And then just having a splash of color here on the backdrop. And I'm using a little light down here. This is a Lupo light. And this panel can do a full gamut of RGB. But what I like about this light is that it's really powerful. And so I'm going to make some adjustments to this light here. I want to get just a nice pop of color. So I'm going to remove this from the background, pull it back a little bit, and then just lower it kind of right there. And I like the way that that looks. And using an RGB light and illuminating a black backdrop, I feel like looks pretty good. You can do this with white or gray as well, but I feel like illuminating black just makes it a little bit more punchier. So the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take a test photo, and we'll just see how this looks. So I'll come over here, and let's just snap a pic. So this is really dusty, by the way. Oh my gosh. Super shallow depth of field. I think this is a 2.8 lens here. And so switch to another angle. Yeah, I think this one's at a 2.8, so I'm shooting wide open, which I think for this case, we might just stop down. Let's do like a 5.6. And I'm just gonna bump the ISO a little bit. Right now I'm just sort of setting my scene, setting my camera settings as well. So not nearly as shallow. Still soft, or like the fall off is like there, but you can kind of see the depth of field here on the table. Yeah, a lot less shallow. Cool. So one thing I like to do is come up with a way to make it float, because what I really want is I want the camera to sort of do something like this, right? I want it to do kind of like this action. I really like doing these simple edits to make objects or products sort of just float in space. I feel like it gives it like an ethereal look and just makes it kind of cool. And they're just kind of fun to edit. They're really quick, simple edits to do. It's just taking two shots, one of an empty backdrop, and then you just composite this over, cut this out in Photoshop, and I can have an edit of this done pretty fast. So let's get one of the arms. I really like using these clamp arms to sort of get everything going here. This is what's going to help make it float. I could do it with my hand if I really wanted to, but I like using these clamps and these little arms because I could just hold it in place. I can get the lighting just right. Also, I find if you're doing one of those edits where you're kind of like trying to hold the object and sort of like Photoshop your hand out, you know, sometimes you're going to get like reflections of your hand or your skin depending on the angle or depending on really the shape of what you're holding. Sometimes you can get away with it. Like if it's something where you can hold it from like back here and you can just hold it like that so you can just easily cut around it, that's fine. But you can see it's a little reflective underneath that black, so it's going to pick up my hand in the background. So you're really just adding kind of more things to Photoshop there. And I want to make the Photoshop part as streamlined as possible. So I'm just going to clamp this down real tight on the table. There we go. And change the angle a little bit. I don't know if you can hear my son upstairs making noise, but it sounds like he's having a good time right now. So I just kind of play with this a little bit. And you can see I'm going to get it roughly in frame. You can just do this end. Part of the idea of this streaming process is really kind of show warts and all of the whole process. I feel like a lot of tutorials are very streamlined and heavily edited, which obviously, you know, you're looking for information very quickly. So you don't want to watch someone struggle for a couple of hours, but sometimes it's reassuring to just sort of watch someone fail. I find it reassuring, because then I know when I'm spending way too long on something that should be easy, it's nice to know that other people have the same problem. I can kind of just take this gaff tape and sort of just tape it in place. Let's see how that looks on camera. Not great. And also, it's not holding very well. Let's see if I can do something like that, and then extend this out a little bit. There we go. Now we're getting somewhere. And I just want to get it dead center in the frame. I can move things around, but the space in here is kind of tight, so I don't want to move everything too much. I'd rather just move the object to get it centered to where I kind of wanted it. Again, I'm working out of my basement here. I think I'm going to move some things around to maximize the space for when I'm shooting, but I think for the purposes of this. So, it looks pretty okay. I don't love it. This backlight's not doing much. You get a little reflection there. I kind of want this more at like an angle like that. And then, you know, this is obviously a sort of cheap camera, but I want a little bit of pop here so you can kind of see what's going on. So maybe you can see what I'm talking about. I want a better highlight, sort of just see some of that gold color just here, a little highlight there. Maybe if I hold it with the tape just like that, I might be able to get it in the right place before it falls off. Not quite. Let me try another piece of tape and see where I end up. If I put this one on just a little bit better. Okay, I'm getting somewhere. Kind of liking this. Maybe you can see, maybe if I can get the right angle. Ugh. This is a cheap 1080 webcam that I have, but I thought this would provide a nice little extra angle. You can kind of see what I'm doing here. But let's go back to this main one. So what I like about gaff tape is it's a little malleable. It kind of lets you play a little bit. So how does that look? I'm gonna come check it out over here. Looks okay. I'm gonna adjust the focus. All right, we got something. It is floating. It's kind of up there. This is a pretty easy, nice clean edge that I can just cut in Photoshop. So that way it'll look real nice and clean when I'm making it float. The angle is not dramatic, right? Like it could be more of a dramatic angle to really make it exaggerated that it's floating. But let's try one like this. Let's see where we get with this. One thing I'm going to do really quick though is I'm going to get some foam. I have a piece of foam over here. It might be buried over in my... Oh no, my camera lost me. So one funny thing about this Osmo, here I'll let you see it in real time. Sometimes the face tracking can sort of lose you. Oh, there we go. So sometimes you have to reset it. Now when you have it in webcam mode, it doesn't let you use the phone to make any adjustments. Ignore my pile of garbage back here. I'm going to clean that up later. But I have some foam. Actually, sorry, this isn't even foam. This is just paper. And this is pretty easy. So you can just take this, bend it right in half, and just sort of make like a book. And then what I can do is scoot right over this way. Oh no, it lost me again. There we go. Yeah, I guess you can sort of see from this angle too. But what you can do is sort of just have it stand there. See the difference? A little less dead in the front. And I can get it pretty close before it gets in the frame. A little bit of bounce light goes a long way. That looks a lot better. Again, the angle's not as dramatic as I want, but I think it'll suffice for now. Again, this is kind of just a test. I want to see if this even works. I hope the audio is coming in okay. I feel like 20 minutes in is not the time to check the audio, but let's live with it. Let's see what we get. So, this looks pretty good. It's in focus. Let's see. I'm also getting used to using this Xbox controller as a switcher, so it's going to take me a little bit of time to sort of get the hang of that. This is going to be a real rough video, that's for sure. I think the idea here is that I want to set up something that is rough around the edges. I kind of want people to see the process and just see, like, it's not rainbows and sunshine all the way through. I like the way it looks. It's a little flat, but I like the way it looks. I think it looks pretty simple. Let's try it. And we got some shadow here, so that'll be pretty neat. I can utilize that. Let's try it. Let's see what we can do with what we have here. So since we have the kind of hero image that we want, quote unquote hero, obviously it's not perfect, but I can just remove this. I like to get the blank after because the depth of field is kind of just in the same spot. So you just quickly pull it away. Just grab a picture of the blank. Cool, and there we go. Pretty simple. And let's see. Great. So, now that we have both images, I'm going to open these up in Photoshop, get that going for a second. And I just realized I don't think my tablet's plugged in, is it? Oh, it is plugged in. My desk is a little messy. Just quickly, one thing that I love editing with is Wacom tablets. Cannot live without this. If you prefer editing with a mouse, that's always fine. I just really, really like Wacom tablets. I'm gonna drag both of these in here. There we go. So I'm just gonna select them both. I'm just gonna make a couple of minor adjustments here. I'm not really going to do much. Played with the sliders ever so slightly, but at least both synchronized across the board. And then let's see, I'm just going to paste this in. And I'm just going to go right off the bat with the pen tool here. Now, there's a million different ways to make selections in Photoshop these days, like literally a million different ways. Some of the subject select tools are getting really good. Obviously, you can do select and mask and do a lot of work there. Frankly, I just like the pen tool. For the amount of time that I'll have to spend in select and mask, and you can see I'm kind of hovering on the outside here. I'm not going too deep into the detail because it'll just blend into the previous image. Where I'm really going to make the harsh cut is along here, where this line is going to cut in just a little bit. But I prefer the pen tool because A, I've just been using it for so long, so I just feel like I'm the fastest with this. I mean, this is something where I can just slice and dice and just be done with it. I like that I can just save the path for future use. Once in a while I'll go back and I'll need that. It's not always, but here it is. So, you know, you can save it and it'll just be embedded in the file. And then I can just make this into a selection. Boom. Look at that, it's floating. Pretty straightforward, right? Well, here's the thing. A, the image is kind of blah, but B, it looks fake because there is no shadow detail. So what I'm gonna do is I'm actually gonna just duplicate this and see that? What I want is this shadow detail here, right? But obviously you have the shadow from everything else. So, Control I, just going to invert that. And then with this brush, I'm just going to bring it back. Why is there such a stark color difference between the two of these? Did I change something? Is there... Was I standing in front of the light? It's way less orange for some reason. That is so strange. Why is that? Huh. Literally with and without. Do I have auto white balance on? I totally do. Oh my gosh. I'm such a genius. So, thank God I shot these in RAW. This is what I mean about warts and all. So I made a very, very clear mistake, and I didn't even bother looking at the color temperature of these. So I'm actually just going to start from scratch and just drag these two both in Photoshop again. Yeah, literally the color temperature difference is right there, clear as day. So 5600 was the key light, but because the board was reflecting that very harsh backlight, we can just dial this back just a little bit, maybe split the difference at like 44. 43 looks pretty okay. Now they should be about the same at the bottom. There we go. That is so silly. That's such a rookie mistake. What happened was I had my camera on location and I handed it off to someone to get some photos for a grand opening event. And I just set everything to auto and auto white balance as well. And I just told them, you know, focus on framing, spray and pray. You can't miss. And I didn't bother to check my white balance settings. I mean, like I said, this is a test, so I'm not streaming this live just yet, but my plan is I would like to do a stream once or twice a week and sort of show the process. I'm going to keep a little bit of this out of of focus area that's on the outside here. But I just want to show my process. I think I want to rebrand this too. I don't know what I'm going to call this. Maybe I'll call it Jordan Fails at Stuff, because I think that's really the most valuable learning opportunity. You're not even looking at the right feed. Oh my God. I'm so bad at this. I am not a professional streamer. So definitely have to get better at checking the camera feeds when I'm switching between feeds. And you know what? I'm just going to leave that up just like that. I'm just going to have to live with it and learn from it. Didn't miss much. I'm just cutting this out again, same as I did last time. I could have done the smart thing, and I could have just redone the image that I did before. Or I could have just redone the raw file and just kept that mask, but whatever. I can live with my mistakes. I'm just going to duplicate this, fill this with nothing, just take a brush, and I'm just going to paint that right back in. And I'm just using the opacity. Opacity is at 100 right now, but then I set it to 30 because there's still a little color temperature difference, so I'm kind of trying to split the difference between the two and sort of borrow some of that nasty color temp. Why does that look so splotchy? It's weird. Alright, scrubby zoom's gotta go bye-bye. Not a fan of scrubby zoom. Why does the gold look so funny here? Okay, so what I did was, you can see I just brought some of this back a little bit, some of that shadow detail, so it looks a little bit more natural. So it looks like a floating object, a real floating object with a shadow. So it doesn't feel as fake, even though it is kind of clearly fake. I'm just going to do a square format for this and just kind of maybe center it right up. That's kind of the subject. Oh gosh, you're not even going to capture the... You know what? What I can do is I can just fudge it a little bit and just take this, and then there you go. It still has that shadow detail. And then what I'll do is I'm just going to take a hue sat, invert it, and just sort of gently paint it in there. Why is that so splotchy there? Also, I am using my mouse. I know I was talking about using a Wacom tablet, but it just dawned on me that I don't have the drivers installed because I just swapped to a new computer recently, and I had to set up a whole bunch of stuff. It still looks extra splotchy, so maybe I'll just do an extra splotch of hue sat to compensate. And then what I'll do is, so if you want to be extra, you can make a new layer, and then you can, oh my gosh, create a clipping mask. It's only going to affect the layer that's underneath. And then I can just do a clone stamp, 25%, sure. And current and below. And then kind of just go at it, you know, like this. You know, that's one way of doing it. I feel like it's just going to take forever. And frankly, I don't care if I lose that info forever. So I'm just going to be a little bit more destructive in my editing, and I'm just going to do a spot healing right on the layer itself. I feel like one bad habit that you can have in Photoshop is you make all these extra layers, so you can always say, oh, what if I want to go back? Do I really want to go back to what all these like little dust spots look like? No, I really don't. And that's a bad habit that I had from learning Photoshop years ago. And I'm just going to make some adjustments here. Actually, speaking of bad habits, I'll feather it, shift it in a little bit. I promise I'm normally not this sloppy. I think part of it is my headspace has been so occupied with sort of setting up all of these different cameras and this little Osmo guy and everything else that, you know, if I was just editing, and I mean literally just editing like normal, I would be done by now. So I think a couple of things I need to figure out is memorizing which input is on my damn controller so I know that I'm switching to the right one so people can see what I'm talking about. Gotta make sure I have all of my drivers. Let's see what it does. See, I don't like it when you get those like soft artifacts, so this is where I'm going to use the clone brush, but I'm just going to use like 40%, sort of just create a hard edge-ish. Looks a little bit better. Yeah, spots pretty fine. Sometimes it can get a little finicky, but spot healing. Patch tool's kind of my favorite. That's another one. I do like clone, obviously, when the situation calls for it. When it comes to cleaning up your image, I mean, really, it's just your own preference. So you can see, like, there's a little bit of, you're losing some of that noise information, so it makes it look, you know, a little fake when you overuse the spot healing. That's why sometimes I like the patch, because the patch seems like it brings noise over. So actually I can just demonstrate that. So like this area, you know, boom. I like patch because it's like, I don't know, the best way to describe it is a combination of clone and healing. Oh yes, I know. Also like Photoshop I just got installed, like this is a newer PC. So I just have to install everything, get all of my settings. I don't even have my actions on here. There's so much to do and so little time for it. Patch tool I like too if you're using a Wacom tablet, which obviously I'm not right now, I'm using my mouse, but I like it with a Wacom tablet because just circling things and dragging, you kind of get a good groove for it. Pretty clean. Couple spots left. See if the spot healing, yeah, that'll get it. You know, don't overthink it when you're editing. That's the best advice I can give. Just don't overthink it. I feel like people overthink it. The only people who are really going to pixel peep are other photographers who I'm sure will watch this and critique my every move. But you know what? I'm just not going to overthink it because the whole point of this is for me to have fun. I have all this camera stuff. You know, I have a full-time job making videos and I enjoy it a lot. But I just like doing random things in my spare time. And it's all of my random side projects where I've learned a lot. I've learned new techniques. I've kind of learned new things about how I like to work. So the whole point of this is for me to sort of push myself and try something new. And I'm going to be honest, I'm probably going to fail at it a bunch. So feel free to judge, but Oh, you know what? That's my dehumidifier making noise. Ugh. I had the wrong camera up again. I don't even know how long I had the wrong camera up. Cool. I'm pretty happy with the way this came out. Simple, you know, nothing easy. Or it's simple, it's nothing hard. I didn't do anything too complex. There's a lot of things I can do to sort of fix this. You know, the way this piece is sticking out makes it look not great. I feel like this area, because it's like glass, it's a little bit like washed out. Make it like contrastier. Nah, forget it. I'm gonna give up on that. Yeah, I'm okay with it. Another thing that I like to do, since you have the subject isolated from the background, one thing that I really like to do is take these, merge them together, and I can just put it out of focus, like really out of focus, and then just sort of bring all that in, and just leave that little strip, that little depth of field strip there, leave that alone. Just a little extra, like, out of focusy. Lose a little of that noise detail, but kind of makes it separate a little bit better. So that is, in a nutshell, kind of what my process is, at least for me shooting something like this in 30 minutes. I don't love the image, but I'm okay with it. Ultimately, my goal here was to kind of push myself and try something new. I really got to work out this stream stuff. I'm definitely a little rusty with this because I want to make sure I get this right if I'm going to do this live. This is just pre-recorded as a test. I might post this and share this so you can see how much I messed up, but I think it's okay to fail. I think it's okay to sort of get things wrong. That's how we learn, and I think this has been a good learning exercise for me, not just in sort of setting up what would be a live stream, but also just sort of learning to put myself out there in a different way that I'm not used to. Okay, one thing that's irking me a little, this corner's irking me a little bit. I'm just gonna, it's just really bothering me. I can just make it look a little bit crisper. It's bothering me less. It's not as rounded as I wanted, but it is bothering me less. This is bothering me too, but I'm not going to go crazy over it. But ultimately my goal was to just try something new, and I did it, and I'm here. I want to do more Photoshop things. I want to do more DaVinci Resolve things. I want to do more all kinds of things. I also have a 3D printer, so there's some 3D printer projects that I want to work on as well. I have a few files that I've worked with for accessories for some of my cameras and other things, so I want to sort of show using that and how to print and do some of those things. This is really just going to be an amalgamation of me trying different things and maybe occasionally getting them right. So hopefully I got something good out of this. Stay tuned. I'm going to try more of these, and maybe I'll be a little bit better on the next go-round.